Mr. McEachin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, start by thanking you for your leadership on the most urgent threat facing our planet, climate change. I want to thank the panelists for being here today. In particular, I'm very happy to see my good friend Reverend Yearwood here today. Reverend, I've enjoyed working with you over the past. Thank you. Reverend, I've enjoyed working with you over the past 2 years, and I look forward to our continued partnership. In that vein, Reverend, I want to start with you. Amazingly, it's been articulated today that there's a mistaken idea that moving towards a clean energy economy will hurt low-income communities and communities of color. I need you to speak to what the rising health and economic costs of climate change will be for those communities, specifically if we fail to move in that direction.
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. First, we can definitely fight poverty and pollution at the same time. And let me say clearly that the assessment that Mr. Holly, respectfully, I disagree completely with what he put forth as the idea that people of color are not concerned about the climate, about climate change, about the environment, about their health, in that aspect. I think that one of the things here in that and we know that 200,000 Americans are dying yearly because of air pollution. We know that we have millions of children and millions of adults who have asthma, emphysema, and are getting cancer. We know that 68% of people of color, particularly black people, are living within 30 miles of coal-fired power plants. That the deregulations of the mercury rule and the car rule and and many of the rules being rolled back by EPA would hurt people of color. And so one of the things here that I just want to say, and this is, Mr. Holly, please understand what reason why I was making this assessment is this. For me, as a minister, having buried a young girl because of asthma, that mother no longer cares about how much that utility bill would have cost. That child I had to bury because of asthma, she would have much more been concerned about dealing with a particulate matter in the atmosphere. And so the health concerns are one of the key concerns that are within the communities of color. The idea that we are not also concerned about our future and future generation is frankly absurd. The idea that we don't care that the sea levels are rising and that we will be first and worst, will be hurt by climate change is outlandish. The fact for me, being from Louisiana and seeing what happened with Hurricane Katrina and or Harvey in Houston, those are the kind of things that have a huge impact on communities of color. So to sit up here, honestly, at this critical moment and to then purport the idea that people of color are somehow making this decision that they are more concerned about their energy bill than their health, their energy bill than their life, then that is literally ludicrous. If you think anybody, and it was come to earlier about with this was Black History Month and civil rights, the idea that also that poverty is also put upon with communities of color is also outlandish. That we know this is not about this poor people of color, but poor white people are also the fact of the matter. They want clean air and clean water. As I said earlier, climate change is a civil rights issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reverend. Am I pronouncing this correctly? Is it Yeampierre, Mr. Yeampierre?
So Jean-Pierre, yes.
You know, how do we make sure that as we move towards a clean energy economy, that we invest greener technologies in communities, in low-income communities and communities of color so they're not left behind? How do we do that?
Whether it's in Michigan, whether it's in Detroit, or in Brooklyn, New York, or Richmond, California, where there's fracking going on in people's backyards, communities of color and frontline communities, whether they're in Indian country, are working on operationalizing just transitions. They're looking at different economies of scale. Anything from community-owned solar to trying to figure out how they can create food systems that will withstand the changes that are coming. And there has to be an investment in those communities. And we also need to start thinking about governance differently. Climate change is going to disrupt governance. And so the idea is that we need to start creating transformational partnerships with communities that are in the front line and that are engaging in this kind of transformation. The other thing is that the needs are different everywhere in the country. So the needs of a rural community are not the same of an urban community. Folks that are dealing with mountaintop removal in Appalachia are dealing with different kinds of challenges. And so it isn't cookie cutter, but it is a commitment to trying to work with people on the ground and being led by the ground in partnership, because that's what it's going to take. Climate change is not going to, it is not going to, top-down solutions are not going to be sustained over time. They just don't work. People on the ground are going to have to lead, and we're going to have to be partners in those kinds of decisions. So, and sharing and creating a space where we share expertise and information with each other. Reverend is talking about Louisiana. In my mind, all I'm thinking about was those floating black bodies. As people of African ancestry, that is the truth for all of us all over the United States, right? I think about Puerto Rico. I think about Louisiana. And so I think that it's really important that those communities that are leading and are doing the work, that they not be marginalized and that they be supported and invested in.
Thank you so much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.